This video contains disturbing stories shared by anonymous users on Reddit. Viewer discretion is advised. These stories may include mentions of violence, death, or unsettling situations. All content is intended for entertainment and commentary purposes only. The creator does not condone or support any harmful behavior described. What's the most shocking thing you found out about someone you know? Someone I was friends with when I was 16 ended up murdering a guy and then chopping his body up and throwing him in trash bags in the woods. A kid in the neighborhood used to be my brother's friend when they were both like 9 or 10 or something. There was just something off about him, in my recollection anyway. Years later, I found out that when he was 27, he murdered his father in a schizophrenic episode and hid him in the crawl space. He'd done time a few times out of simply being crazy, and had been committed and was forced to take meds. After some time, apparently, he'd been able to convince the staff to not supervise him so closely, stopped taking his meds, and proceeded to make good on his threats of killing his parents. I worked with an ex-Marine for years, and closely for years. My last day, I asked him to help me with something, and he said, "Oh, sure, ask the guy with one leg." I told him he was full of shit, and he took a hammer and hit his shin, to which I heard metal. Thinking it was a joke, I asked him to lift his pants. Sure enough, this man had one leg, and I never knew. I worked with a guy for 4 to 5 years. He was even my boss at one point. He always carried his suit jacket draped over his right hand. I never gave it a second thought. One day I went to shake his hand, which I, for whatever reason, had never done before. And he looked at me like, "Woof, bro, are you kidding?" He then extends his right arm, and for the first time ever, I realized he didn't have a right hand. I honestly can't remember now if he wore a prosthetic hand or simply left it as a nub, but I do remember apologizing profusely. He just laughed it off and thought I had been ducking with him. He killed Jeffrey Dahmer. No shit. I grew up in the same neighborhood as Chris Scarver. I didn't even know that was him till I attended a friend's wedding. Another guy and I were catching up, and he said, "You heard about Chris, right?" I replied, "What did that crazy MFer do this time?" He replied, "He killed Dahmer." Then it hit me that I saw him on TV and didn't even recognize him. No way. My mom used to be Chris Scarver's prison guard. I have a friend whom I've known for a few years. We've worked together at a couple of different places and we get along great. He's a bit of a jackass, but generally a fun guy to talk to and hang out with. We were already in our 40s when we met, and obviously everyone has a past, but when he told me he'd spent nearly a decade in prison for attempted murder, I was shocked. I didn't believe him. He was telling me the story of what happened, and everything seemed to make sense. He was young, just 18, and he was on drugs and suffering from mental illness. When I got home that night, I did some digging and found some records that indicated he was being truthful about it. It didn't really change the way I saw him or how I felt about him at all. He's still the same person I've known all these years now. I just know a bit more about his past than I previously did. I don't see him as more dangerous. It's just a tragic story about a kid who did something awful, paid for it, and worked his way back into society. My dad committed tax fraud, perjury, and identity fraud against me to the Canadian government. I am a disabled university student. He is a pilot that makes $300,000 per year. I have childhood friends who discovered after their dad's death, the kids were adults by then, that their dad had fraudulently taken out full powers of attorney on them, refinanced his house in their names, and never paid any taxes. We found out at the funeral that my wife's grandpa had a second family. There was a group of people huddling around his widow, she was 90 at the time, that no one recognized. They were chatting it up with grandma for quite some time, and eventually my wife's dad and aunt asked them to leave. There was kids, adults, and seniors in this group, multiple generations of people. My mother-in-law finally fessed up and said they were his other family. Jaws hit the floor, and it was really weird for the rest of the ceremony. They also tried to claim some of his stuff afterwards. Had to watch Grandma's house like a hawk because they would snoop around and try to say, "He would want us to have this." Having secret second families, another business ruined by millennials. My wife died 2 years ago at a young age, 49. A week later, I decided to go through her personal devices to see if there were any other friends or family that needed to be contacted. What I found instead is that my wife had always been chasing after other men during our entire 12 years together. When she met me, she had a side BF that she was crushing on, but his life was too much of a mess for her to seriously consider him as a suitor. She was a single mom with 2 kids and needed stability, but she loved the attention he showered her with, constantly begging her for attention. And there were other men too that she met online. In total, I was up to 6 BFs she had during the time of our relationship. I stopped digging because each new BF revelation absolutely destroyed me. It did explain, however, why our relationship stalled after we moved in together. She became disinterested in growing deeper in relationship with me and was doing the minimum to keep stringing me along because I was paying the bills for her and her kids. And because I genuinely loved her, I was always hoping things would eventually get better between us. But things were never going to get better, only worse, because she was actively sabotaging our chances. He thought broccoli was spelled broccoli. I love Reddit. In 3 scrolls, I went from, I knew the guy who killed Jeffrey Dahmer, dead wife was having affairs for the whole 12 years we were together, to, he thought it was spelled broccoli. Someone that I went to high school with who became a family doctor got busted for being a PDF file. In the article, it said he was wanting to abuse boys and girls as young as 1 and 3. His father was a family doctor in our small town too, so it was quite the scandal. We had a PA here in Pennsylvania who was busted for that. Scandal? Blew over fairly swiftly considering how long he'd practiced at a major medical company. As a family practitioner, which probably had a lot to do with the major medical company. My cousin got serious with a guy she was dating and wanted the family to meet him. She warned us that he'd been in prison and had a past with gangs / drugs, but had been clean for a decade and was ready to settle down. He looked the part. Gang tattoos, shaved head, silver teeth. Looked a decade older than he was. Absolutely looked like a gangbanger. At 6 feet 3 inches and around 275, he was physically intimidating. That being said, he is absolutely the nicest guy. Very kind and respectful and obviously in love with my cousin. Cousin had been dealt a tough hand. Absent father and a chronically ill mother and an ex-husband that abandoned her when she was pregnant. So to see her with someone that adores her and was so wonderful with her daughter just made us all so happy. He took administrative classes while he was in prison and has used that to work his way up to a supervisor position at a local hospital. He runs outreach programs at the juvenile detention center. After he and my cousin got married, he adopted her daughter, and they have a little boy that's almost a year old. People can look a certain way and we can expect behavior that reflects that. But Joaquin taught our family that people can change if they are truly motivated to. He's such an amazing guy and my cousin is so happy. They deserve all the good things in the world. Childhood friend, I found out reading a newspaper that he was arrested with over €1 million worth of drugs. He got 10 years in jail. Apparently tried to blame his then-girlfriend and mother of his child. Fast forward 10 years, I'm watching the 6 o'clock news and he's been arrested again. This time for attempted murder. He shot his next-door neighbor, leaving her paralyzed from the waist down. Ended up getting 15 to 20 years in jail. That's it for today. Comment down below on what's the most shocking thing you found out about someone you know.